Phoebe Morgan's eyes snapped open in the dead of night. Something was wrong. The air in her upscale suburban home felt different, charged with an unnatural silence that made her skin crawl. She glanced at the empty space beside her, where her husband Nathan should have been sleeping. The digital clock cast an eerie green glow, 3:17 a.m. "Nathan," she called out, her voice unnaturally loud in the silent house. No response. Pulling herself from bed, Phoebe made her way down the hallway, her bare feet silent against the polished hardwood floor. A faint sound reached her ears, not a cry, not a voice, but something else. Something unsettling. The sound grew clearer as she approached the nursery. It was Miles, her African grey parrot, making agitated noises from his cage in the corner of the baby's room. Miles had been a gift from Nathan's mother years ago, a beautiful creature with keen intelligence that had always fascinated Phoebe. "Miles." "Shh," she whispered, pushing open the door to the nursery. The room was bathed in soft moonlight from the window. Phoebe's heart rate accelerated as her eyes went straight to the crib in the center of the room. Empty. "Oliver," she gasped, rushing forward to throw back the blankets, as if her baby might somehow be hidden beneath them. Nothing. Miles erupted into a flurry of agitated wing flaps and squawks, more worked up than Phoebe had ever seen him. He took, Miles screeched, the words perfectly clear despite coming from a bird's beak. "He took, back door." Phoebe froze, her blood turning to ice. Miles had an extensive vocabulary, but she had never taught him these phrases, never heard him say these words before. "Nathan," she screamed, panic flooding her system. "Nathan." She tore through the house, flipping on lights, heart pounding against her ribs. The back door stood slightly ajar, a whisper of cool night air slipping through the gap. Outside, the gate to their backyard was open, swinging gently in the breeze. Nathan appeared from his home office, face pale with confusion. "What's wrong? What's happening?" "Oliver is gone," Phoebe choked out, her voice breaking. "The crib is empty. Miles keeps saying he took. The back door was open." Nathan's face transformed from confusion to horror in an instant. He rushed to the nursery to confirm what Phoebe had said, then pulled out his phone with shaking hands to call the police. As Nathan spoke frantically with the emergency dispatcher, Phoebe returned to Miles, who continued his distressed calls. "He took, back door, quiet, quiet." "Who, Miles?" Phoebe whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Who took Oliver?" But Miles only repeated the same phrases, occasionally adding, "Black coat, quiet steps." Within minutes, their peaceful neighborhood was transformed by the flashing lights of police cars. Officers swarmed through the house and yard, asking questions, taking notes, radioing information. Detective Olivia Ramirez arrived last, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the scene. Unlike the uniformed officers who seemed skeptical of Phoebe's story about the parrot, Detective Ramirez took particular interest in Miles. "African greys are incredibly intelligent," she told Phoebe, studying the agitated bird. "They have the problem-solving abilities of a young child and can develop vocabularies of hundreds of words. If yours is saying he took, there's a good chance he witnessed something." "But Miles has never said those words before," Nathan insisted, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "We've never taught him that phrase." "That's what makes it significant," Detective Ramirez replied. "Parrots often mimic what they hear in the moment. If Miles is saying he took, he might be repeating something he heard tonight." The implications of this statement hung heavy in the air. As dawn broke, casting long shadows across the yard, the initial search had yielded nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, no signs of forced entry. It was as if Oliver had simply vanished into thin air. The only evidence they had was a parrot's testimony, words that no court would accept. Detective Ramirez stationed officers at the house and organized search teams for the surrounding area. "I need you both to think," she told Phoebe and Nathan. "Is there anyone who might want to hurt you by taking your child? Any enemies, recent conflicts, unusual interactions?" Phoebe shook her head, feeling numb. "Everyone loves Oliver. He's just a baby." Nathan nodded in agreement, but Detective Ramirez noticed something flicker across his face, a shadow of doubt perhaps, or a memory that troubled him. "Mr. Morgan, is there something you want to share?" Nathan hesitated, glancing at Phoebe. "No, nothing specific. It's just, my company has been going through some tough negotiations lately. I've had to let people go. There's been tension. We'll look into it, Detective Ramirez promised. In the meantime, I'd like to set up recording equipment near your Parrot. If Miles repeats anything else he might have heard, we want to capture it. By midday, their home had been transformed into a command center. Neighbors gathered outside, offering support, while news vans lined the street. The story of the missing baby and the talking parrot had caught the media's attention, spreading rapidly across local networks. Phoebe sat in the rocking chair in Oliver's nursery, staring blankly at the empty crib. Miles had grown quieter as the day progressed, but occasionally he would start up again with his disturbing message. He took back door, quiet steps. In the kitchen, Nathan spoke in hushed tones with Detective Ramirez, providing details about his work at Morgan Financial Solutions, a mid-sized investment firm he had built from the ground up. He mentioned a recent corporate restructuring that had resulted in several layoffs, including some long-time employees who hadn't taken the news well. "Any specific threats?" Detective Ramirez asked. Nathan shook his head. "Nothing explicit, just the usual grumbling. People upset about losing their jobs. We'll need a list of everyone affected by the layoffs," she said, making notes. "And I'd like to have our tech team take a look at your home security system. You mentioned it didn't trigger when the back door was opened." "That's right," Nathan confirmed. "It should have set off an alarm instantly." Detective Ramirez's expression remained carefully neutral, but the implication was clear. Either the security system had malfunctioned, or someone knew how to disable it. As the day wore on, Phoebe noticed something strange about her husband's behavior. Nathan seemed to be avoiding Oliver's room and Miles altogether. When she mentioned it, he brushed it off, claiming he was working with the police and making calls to anyone who might have information. Evening fell with no new leads. The search teams returned empty-handed. No ransom demands had been made. It was as if Oliver had simply vanished. Exhausted and heartbroken, Phoebe finally fell into a restless sleep on the couch, while Nathan remained in his office, supposedly reviewing security footage from neighboring houses. She awoke in the early hours to the sound of Miles screeching again. Rushing to the nursery, she found the parrot more agitated than ever. Car keys, bag ready," Miles called out, bobbing his head frantically. Phoebe froze, listening. These were new phrases, and they seemed to be directed at her specifically, as if Miles was trying to tell her something urgent. Quietly, she slipped down the hallway toward Nathan's office. The door was closed, but she could hear his voice inside, speaking in low, intense tones. "Didn't have a choice," she heard him say. "You don't understand what's at stake here." Phoebe's heart pounded as she leaned closer to the door. "It was the only way to make her understand," Nathan continued. "Once this is over, everything will go back to normal. She'll see I was right." Phoebe's hand flew to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Was Nathan talking about her? About Oliver? Before she could hear more, Miles let out another loud screech from the nursery. Nathan's voice stopped abruptly. Phoebe hurried back to the living room, throwing herself on the couch and pretending to be asleep, just as Nathan emerged from his office. Through nearly closed eyes, she watched as he checked on her, then walked to the kitchen and poured himself a drink with shaking hands. For the first time since this nightmare began, a terrible suspicion took root in Phoebe's mind. Nathan's strange behavior, his reluctance to enter the nursery, his late-night phone conversation, and there was something else, something that had been nagging at the edges of her consciousness. Nathan had claimed to be working in his office when Oliver disappeared, but she distinctly remembered his side of the bed being empty when she woke up. Where had Nathan really been at 3:17 a.m.? As if reading her thoughts, Miles called out from the nursery again, his voice cutting through the silent house. "Not a stranger. Not a stranger." Phoebe's blood ran cold as the implications of the parrot's words sank in. Not a stranger. In that moment, she knew what she had to do. Quietly, she reached for her phone and sent a text to Detective Ramirez. "I need to speak with you. Alone. As soon as possible." Then, pretending to shift in her sleep, she opened her eyes to find Nathan watching her from the kitchen doorway, his expression unreadable in the shadows. "Is everything okay?" she asked, hoping her voice didn't betray her fear. Nathan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Everything's fine, go back to sleep. Tomorrow will be better, I promise. As he turned away, Phoebe caught a glimpse of his phone screen lighting up with an incoming message. The name that flashed across the top made her heart skip a beat. Lillian, Nathan's former assistant, the one he'd always claimed meant nothing to him, the one he'd fired just weeks ago during the company restructuring. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, forming a picture so devastating that Phoebe could barely breathe. In the nursery, Miles had fallen silent, as if he too was holding his breath, waiting to see what would happen next in the drama unfolding within these walls. And somewhere out there, Oliver was waiting to be found. By his mother, by the police, by someone who could bring him safely home. Phoebe made a silent promise to her son as she lay there, pretending to sleep while her world collapsed around her. I will find you, no matter what it takes, no matter who took you, even if it was your father. Detective Ramirez arrived before dawn, responding to Phoebe's urgent text. They spoke in hushed tones on the front porch, away from the house where Nathan had finally fallen asleep. I think Nathan might be involved, Phoebe whispered, her words hanging in the cool morning air. Last night I overheard him on the phone saying something about making me understand, and that everything would go back to normal. And Miles, her voice caught. Miles keeps saying not a stranger. Detective Ramirez's expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened. Has your husband been in contact with anyone unusual lately? He got a message from Lillian, his former assistant, the one he fired recently. Phoebe wrapped her arms around herself. They were close. Too close sometimes. I see. Detective Ramirez made a note. We'll need to look into this connection. Does Nathan know you suspect him? Phoebe shook her head. I don't think so. I pretended to be asleep when he came out of his office. Good, let's keep it that way for now. The detective checked her watch. I'm going to have an officer stay with you today. Plainclothes, someone who can blend in as a concerned family friend. Meanwhile, we'll investigate both Nathan and Lillian. By mid-morning, the Morgan home was once again bustling with activity. Nathan seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone and making excuses to step outside for calls. Detective Ramirez had introduced Officer Daniel Winters as a victim advocate who would stay with the family, though his true purpose was to monitor Nathan. Phoebe found herself drawn to the nursery, sitting for hours beside Miles's cage. The parrot had grown quieter, but would occasionally lock eyes with her and repeat phrases that chilled her to the bone. Car seat. Baby quiet. Not far, not far. Each new utterance from Miles was carefully recorded by the audio equipment the police had installed, providing a strange sort of testimony from the only witness to Oliver's disappearance. Around noon, Nathan announced he needed to go to his office. There are some security files I can access only from there, he explained. They might help us figure out who could be behind this. Detective Ramirez, who had returned to the house, nodded. That's a good idea, Mr. Morgan. Officer Winters, would you mind accompanying Mr. Morgan to his office? We want to ensure everyone's safety during this difficult time. Nathan hesitated, a flicker of something, annoyance, fear, crossing his face. That's not necessary. I'll be quick. I insist, Detective Ramirez said firmly. Standard procedure in cases like this. With no reasonable way to refuse, Nathan reluctantly agreed, and the two men departed. As soon as they left, Detective Ramirez turned to Phoebe. We're going to search your husband's office here at home. We have a warrant. She produced the document from her jacket. I wanted to wait until he was gone. Phoebe nodded numbly, leading the detective and another officer to Nathan's home office. The room was meticulously organized, with a large desk dominating the space and filing cabinets lining one wall. What are we looking for? Phoebe asked, watching as the officers began their systematic search. Anything unusual? Financial records, communications, evidence of planning? Phoebe stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder in her own home. She watched as Detective Ramirez carefully examined Nathan's desk drawers and computer. The other officer methodically went through the filing cabinets, photographing documents as he went. Mrs. Morgan, Detective Ramirez called suddenly, do you know what these keys are for? She held up a small ring with two unfamiliar keys. They weren't house keys or car keys. They looked like they might open a padlock or a storage unit. Phoebe shook her head. I've never seen those before. And this? The detective held up a receipt from a self-storage facility on the outskirts of town, dated just 3 weeks earlier. Phoebe felt her stomach twist. Nathan never mentioned renting storage. Detective Ramirez nodded grimly. We'll need to check this out immediately. Before they could discuss further, Phoebe's phone rang. It was Officer Winters. Mrs. Morgan, he said, his voice tight. Your husband gave me the slip. He said he needed to use the restroom at the office, but he went out a back exit. We're searching for him now, but I wanted to warn you. Detective Ramirez, who had been listening in, immediately began issuing orders into her radio. All units be advised. Nathan Morgan is now a person of interest and is evading police. Consider him potentially dangerous. He may be headed to the following address. She read off the storage facility location. Mrs. Morgan, we need to move quickly, Detective Ramirez said, escorting Phoebe from the office. I want you to stay here with Officer Chen. We're going to check out that storage unit. No, Phoebe said firmly. If Oliver might be there, I'm coming with you. After a brief argument, Detective Ramirez reluctantly agreed, recognizing that Phoebe couldn't be left behind when her child might be found. The drive to the storage facility was tense, with police vehicles converging from multiple directions. Phoebe sat in the back of Detective Ramirez's unmarked car, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The facility was a sprawling complex of identical orange doors set into long, low buildings. Using the receipt they'd found, they located Unit 237, tucked away in a remote corner of the property. Stay back, Detective Ramirez instructed, as officers approached the unit with weapons drawn. One officer used the keys they'd found to unlock the padlock. When the door rolled up, Phoebe gasped. The unit contained a makeshift living space, a small couch, a table, some basic supplies. But no Oliver. What is this place? She whispered. Detective Ramirez moved carefully through the unit, examining everything. It looks like someone was staying here. Recently, too. She pointed to a coffee cup on the table, still half full. One of the officers called out from the back of the unit, "Detective, you need to see this." In the far corner was a crib, identical to the one in Oliver's nursery. Beside it lay baby supplies, diapers, formula, toys, all neatly arranged as if waiting for a child. Phoebe felt her knees buckle. An officer caught her arm, steadying her. "This doesn't make sense," she said, her voice breaking. "Why would Nathan set up a place like this?" Detective Ramirez was examining some papers on the small table. "Mrs. Morgan," she said slowly, "these are airline tickets, 2 one-way tickets to Bermuda, departing tomorrow morning, for Nathan Morgan and Lillian Parker." "But where's Oliver?" Phoebe cried, looking around desperately. "Where's my baby?" Before Detective Ramirez could answer, her radio crackled. "Detective, we've located Nathan Morgan's vehicle. It's parked outside a cabin rental in the foothills, about 30 miles from your location." Detective Ramirez's expression hardened. "That's where we'll find your son, and your husband." The drive to the cabin was the longest of Phoebe's life. As they wound up into the forested foothills, she tried to make sense of what was happening. Nothing added up: the storage unit, the plane tickets, Nathan's behavior. If he was planning to run away with Lillian, why take Oliver? And why set up that strange space in the storage unit? When they finally arrived at the cabin, police had already surrounded it. It was a rustic structure, isolated among the trees, with Nathan's sleek black SUV parked haphazardly out front. "Nathan Morgan," an officer called through a bullhorn. "This is the police. Come out with your hands up." No response came from the cabin. After repeated warnings went unanswered, a tactical team approached the building, carefully breaching the door and sweeping inside. Moments later, the lead officer emerged. "Detective, you need to see this." Detective Ramirez turned to Phoebe. "Wait here, please." But Phoebe couldn't wait, not when Oliver might be inside. She followed Detective Ramirez up the cabin steps, ignoring the officer who tried to stop her. Inside, the scene was confusing. The cabin was sparsely furnished, with just the basics: a couch, a table, a small kitchen area. Nathan sat at the table, his head in his hands. Across from him, handcuffed to a chair, was a woman Phoebe recognized immediately, Lillian Parker. And there, in a portable crib in the corner, was Oliver, sleeping peacefully, unharmed. Phoebe cried out, rushing to her son. She gathered him into her arms, tears streaming down her face as she checked him over. He stirred, opening his eyes, and gave her a sleepy smile that broke her heart all over again. "Nathan," Detective Ramirez said coldly, "you have a lot of explaining to do." Nathan looked up, his face haggard. "This isn't what it looks like." "What it looks like," Detective Ramirez said, "is kidnapping, endangering a child, and false reporting of a crime. At minimum." "You don't understand," Nathan insisted, looking past the detective to Phoebe. "I was trying to protect Oliver, from her." He nodded toward Lillian. Lillian laughed bitterly. "That's rich, Nathan. Tell them the truth." Phoebe, still clutching Oliver to her chest, stared at her husband. "What is she talking about? What truth?" Nathan's shoulders slumped in defeat. "I made a mistake, Phoebe. Her terrible mistake." As officers secured the scene and medics arrived to check on Oliver, the story finally emerged. Nathan had indeed been having an affair with Lillian, but had ended it when he realized how much he valued his family. Lillian, unstable and obsessed, had threatened to harm Oliver if Nathan didn't leave Phoebe. "She said she'd take him if I didn't," Nathan explained hoarsely. "I didn't think she'd really do it until I found the plans on her computer at work. Pictures of our house, notes about our schedules, details about the security system." "So you fired her?" Detective Ramirez said. "Yes, I thought that would be the end of it. But then she started showing up places, outside Oliver's daycare, at the grocery store when Phoebe was shopping, always watching. I was terrified." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Phoebe asked, her voice tight with anger and confusion. Nathan looked away. "She had leverage, emails, photos, things that would have destroyed us, my reputation, the company, our marriage. So instead you took our son and made me think he'd been kidnapped." Phoebe's voice rose incredulously. "Do you have any idea what that did to me?" "I panicked," Nathan admitted. "When I saw her outside our house that night, I knew she was going to try something. I took Oliver before she could. I thought I could handle it myself, confront her, get her to back down, then bring Oliver home before you even knew he was gone." "But Miles saw you," Detective Ramirez said, and started repeating what he heard. Nathan nodded miserably. "I never considered the bird. By the time I realized he was going to expose me, it was too late." Lillian, who had been silently watching this exchange, suddenly spoke up. "He's lying. He asked me to meet him here, said he was finally ready to leave you, said he'd already taken Oliver and set everything up for us to disappear together." "The storage unit," Phoebe whispered. "He set that up, not me," Lillian insisted. "Ask him about the plane tickets." Nathan shook his head vehemently. "I bought those tickets in your name to set you up, to make it look like you were planning to kidnap Oliver and flee the country. I was going to tip off the police anonymously, get you arrested." "And what about Oliver?" Phoebe demanded. "He was just a pawn in your sick game?" Nathan couldn't meet her eyes. "I was going to bring him home today, I swear. I just needed time to deal with Lillian." Detective Ramirez had heard enough. "Nathan Morgan, you're under arrest for kidnapping, child endangerment, filing a false police report, and obstruction of justice." As officers led Nathan away in handcuffs, she turned to Lillian. "And you're not off the hook either, Ms. Parker. We'll be investigating your role in all of this." Outside, as medics examined Oliver more thoroughly in the back of an ambulance, Phoebe stood with Detective Ramirez, trying to process everything that had happened. "The storage unit," Phoebe said suddenly. "If Nathan set it up to frame Lillian, why was there no evidence of Oliver being there?" Detective Ramirez nodded thoughtfully. "That's an excellent question. And why take such an elaborate route? Something still doesn't add up." As they spoke, Phoebe's phone rang. It was Officer Chen, who had stayed at their house. "Mrs. Morgan," he said urgently, "your Parrot is going crazy. He keeps saying something new. Not just 2, 3. Not just 2, 3. Over and over. I recorded it for you." Phoebe felt a chill run down her spine. "Put him on speaker," she told Officer Chen. Miles's voice came through clearly. "Not just 2, 3. Woman calling, Oliver, Oliver, money, money." Detective Ramirez's eyes widened. "What is he talking about? Who's the third person?" Phoebe shook her head, confused, but then a memory surfaced, something she'd noticed but hadn't registered consciously. "The coffee cup," she whispered. "In the storage unit, it had lipstick on it. Neither Nathan nor Lillian was wearing lipstick today." Detective Ramirez was already on her radio, ordering officers back to the storage unit. "This isn't over," she told Phoebe grimly. "There's someone else involved, someone we haven't identified yet." As Phoebe held Oliver close, comforting him with gentle words, she realized that Miles, their extraordinary, observant Parrot, was still trying to tell them something crucial. The mystery wasn't solved, it was only growing deeper, and somewhere out there a third person was watching, waiting, someone connected to Nathan, to Lillian, to the elaborate scheme that had nearly torn her family apart. "Oliver is safe now," she whispered to her son, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them, because if Miles was right, and he had been right all along, the danger wasn't over. It had only just begun. The return to the storage unit proved Detective Ramirez's instincts correct. Forensics teams discovered fingerprints belonging to neither Nathan nor Lillian, along with long strands of red hair that matched neither suspect. The coffee cup with lipstick yielded partial DNA that was being rushed through processing. Back at the Morgan home, Phoebe sat in the rocking chair in Oliver's nursery, gently soothing her son as he drifted off to sleep. Miles watched from his perch, unusually quiet now that Oliver had been returned. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Phoebe whispered to the parrot. "You were trying to tell us the whole story." Miles tilted his head, his intelligent eyes fixed on her. Woman calling. "Money, money." The doorbell rang and Phoebe carefully placed Oliver in his crib before going to answer it. Detective Ramirez stood on the porch with a grim expression. "We need to talk," she said. "May I come in?" In the living room, Detective Ramirez spread photographs across the coffee table, surveillance images from the storage facility. "This woman was recorded entering the unit several times in the past week," she explained, pointing to a figure with distinctive red hair. "Do you recognize her?" Phoebe leaned closer, studying the blurry image. "No, I've never seen her before." "We ran her through facial recognition. Her name is Victoria Sloan, and here's where it gets interesting. She's Nathan's ex-wife." Phoebe sat back, stunned. "Ex-wife? Nathan told me he'd never been married before me." "They were married briefly, many years ago. The marriage was annulled, which might be why it didn't show up in our initial background check." Detective Ramirez tapped another photo. "Here's where the story gets complicated. Victoria worked for a rival financial firm until recently. Based on emails we found on Nathan's computer, they reconnected about 6 months ago." "Were they having an affair?" Phoebe asked, her voice tight. "Not exactly. They were planning something different." Detective Ramirez pulled out a document. "This is a contract between Nathan and Victoria. He agreed to provide insider information about his clients, which she could use to poach them for her firm. In exchange, she would help him eliminate his Lillian problem and secure a generous financial settlement." "I don't understand," Phoebe said. "What does this have to do with Oliver?" "Everything," Detective Ramirez replied. "According to messages we've recovered, the plan was elaborate. Nathan would fake Oliver's kidnapping and implicate Lillian. Victoria would temporarily take Oliver to the cabin, where Nathan would discover him and be hailed as a hero. Meanwhile, Lillian would be arrested based on evidence they planted in that storage unit." "But why? Just to get rid of Lillian?" "Partly, but there was another motive." Detective Ramirez met Phoebe's eyes. "Your family trust." Phoebe's breath caught. Her parents had left her a substantial trust fund that would fully mature when Oliver reached a certain age. The trust included a morality clause. If Phoebe was found unfit as a mother, control would pass to her husband until Oliver came of age. "Nathan was planning to have you declared unfit," Detective Ramirez continued. "Victoria's messages suggest they would use the traumatic kidnapping to push you toward a breakdown. There are prescriptions in Nathan's name for medications that, when mixed with alcohol, could make you appear unstable." "He's been offering me drinks every night," Phoebe whispered, "insisting I needed something to help me sleep." "With you deemed unfit and Lillian in prison for the kidnapping attempt, Nathan would have complete control of the trust. Based on their communications, he and Victoria planned to transfer the funds to offshore accounts and disappear together." And Oliver? What was going to happen to him? Detective Ramirez's expression softened slightly. That's less clear. There are contradictions in their messages. Victoria seemed to think Oliver would go with them. Nathan's messages suggest he might have been planning to leave Oliver with you once he secured the money. Phoebe felt physically ill. The level of calculation, the cold-hearted planning. It was incomprehensible that Nathan, the man she had loved and trusted, could orchestrate something so vile. What went wrong with their plan? She asked. Miles, Detective Ramirez said simply. Nathan never accounted for the Parrot. When Miles started repeating what he'd heard and seen, Nathan had to improvise. He took Oliver to the cabin earlier than planned and called Victoria to help. But she wasn't ready and things started unraveling. From the nursery, Miles suddenly called out, his voice carrying clearly, "Red hair! Hide, baby! Fool police!" Detective Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "Your Parrot continues to be our star witness." "Where is Victoria now?" Phoebe asked, suddenly fearful. "That's why I'm here. We haven't located her yet. There's an APB out. But given what we now know about the plan, we're concerned she might try to complete some version of it." "You think she might come here? Try to take Oliver again?" "It's a possibility we can't ignore. We've stationed officers outside, and I'd like to place one inside your home as well." Phoebe nodded, glancing toward the nursery where Oliver slept peacefully. Whatever it takes to keep him safe. As Detective Ramirez made arrangements for the additional security, Phoebe returned to the nursery. Miles had grown agitated again, pacing back and forth on his perch. "What is it, Miles?" she asked, checking on Oliver, who remained asleep. "Phone ringing," Miles called, mimicking the sound of a cell phone. Phoebe froze. Her phone wasn't ringing, and there was no landline in the nursery. Then she noticed a faint glow coming from beneath the changing table, a cell phone she'd never seen before. Its screen lit up with an incoming call. Carefully, she picked it up. The caller ID read V, Victoria. Phoebe's hand trembled as she answered, putting the phone on speaker so the recording equipment would capture the conversation. "Nathan, why aren't you answering your regular phone?" a woman's voice demanded without preamble. Phoebe remained silent, her heart pounding. "Nathan, are you there? We need to move to Plan B immediately. The police are closing in. I've got the documents and the offshore account numbers. Meet me at the alternate location in 1 hour." Still, Phoebe said nothing. "Nathan." The voice grew suspicious. "Who is this?" "This is Phoebe Morgan," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Nathan's wife, the mother of the child you helped kidnap." There was a long pause. Then, astonishingly, Victoria laughed, a cold, calculated sound. "Well, this is unexpected. I suppose Nathan's been arrested." "Yes, and Lillian too. The police know everything." "I doubt that very much," Victoria replied coolly. "Nathan was always the weak link, too sentimental about the baby, too worried about how things would look." "Why?" Phoebe asked, desperate to keep her talking while Detective Ramirez, who had rushed in at the sound of the conversation, silently worked to trace the call. "Why would you do this? You barely know me or Oliver." "This was never about you or your precious baby," Victoria said dismissively. "This was about what Nathan took from me years ago. My career, my reputation, my future. When he annulled our marriage, he made sure I was blacklisted from every major financial firm. It took me years to rebuild." "So this was all about revenge?" "Revenge and restitution. Your family's trust fund is substantial, more than enough to compensate me for lost time and opportunities. Nathan reached out to me when his Lillian situation got out of control. It was simple to expand the plan to include securing the money he'd promised me." Detective Ramirez signaled to Phoebe, mouthing, "Keep her talking." "And what happens now?" Phoebe asked. "The police are looking for you. Your face is everywhere." Victoria chuckled. "I'm already on my way out of the country. By this time tomorrow, I'll be somewhere with no extradition treaty and access to enough money to live very comfortably." "You'll never get away with this," Phoebe said, the cliché falling from her lips before she could stop it. "I already have, my dear. The offshore accounts were funded 2 days ago. Nathan may not have succeeded in having you declared unfit, but he did manage to transfer a significant portion of the trust fund before things fell apart." Phoebe gasped, looking to Detective Ramirez, who nodded grimly. It was likely true. They'd need to verify with financial investigators. "Give Oliver a kiss goodbye from his Aunt Victoria," the woman said mockingly. "And don't worry, I won't be troubling either of you again. This chapter is closed." The line went dead. Detective Ramirez was immediately on her radio. "Did we get it? Tell me we got a location." A moment later, her face broke into a satisfied smile. "We've got her. She's at the private airfield outside the city. Units are already en route." The next few hours passed in a blur. Phoebe stayed home with Oliver, a police officer stationed outside the nursery door, while Detective Ramirez coordinated the operation to apprehend Victoria Sloan. Miles remained vigilant, occasionally repeating phrases from everything he'd witnessed, but seeming to understand that the immediate danger had passed. Near dawn, Detective Ramirez returned, exhaustion and triumph battling on her face. "We got her," she announced. "Victoria was attempting to board a private jet when our officers arrived. She had documentation for multiple identities and access codes for several offshore accounts." "The money?" Phoebe asked. "Financial Crimes is already working on recovering it. Preliminary reports suggest they should be able to reclaim most of the transferred funds." Phoebe sank into a chair, relief washing over her. "So it's really over?" "Yes," Detective Ramirez confirmed. "Nathan, Lillian and Victoria are all in custody. The conspiracy has been fully exposed." As the sun rose, casting golden light through the nursery windows, Phoebe sat in the rocking chair with Oliver nestled against her chest. Miles had finally settled, his eyes half closed in contentment. "Thank you," she whispered to the parrot. "You saved Oliver. You saved us all." Miles ruffled his feathers, seeming to preen at the acknowledgement. "Family safe now," he said clearly. A new phrase one Phoebe had never heard him use before. Family safe now. In the months that followed, life slowly found a new rhythm. Nathan, Victoria and Lillian all faced justice. Multiple charges that ensured they would spend years behind bars. The trust fund was fully restored, with Phoebe establishing additional safeguards to protect Oliver's future. Detective Ramirez remained a presence in their lives, checking in regularly and eventually becoming a trusted friend. She had taken a special interest in Miles, even consulting with ornithologists about the remarkable cognitive abilities the parrot had displayed throughout the ordeal. "African greys have the problem-solving abilities of a young child," one expert explained during a conference where Miles's role in solving the case was presented. "But what makes Miles extraordinary is his ability to synthesize information and communicate it effectively. He didn't just repeat phrases. He selected the relevant ones at crucial moments. Miles became something of a celebrity, featured in news stories and scientific journals. Phoebe was careful to protect him from too much attention, ensuring that their home remained a peaceful sanctuary, despite the interest in their remarkable story. On the anniversary of Oliver's rescue, Phoebe sat in the garden, watching her son toddle after butterflies while Miles supervised from a nearby perch. The parrot had grown even more attached to Oliver, keeping a watchful eye on the child, and alerting Phoebe to any potential dangers with his distinctive squawk. "You know," Detective Ramirez said, joining Phoebe on the garden bench, "in all my years of police work, I've never seen anything quite like your parrot." Phoebe smiled, watching as Miles hopped down to follow Oliver, maintaining a careful distance while staying close enough to intervene if needed. "He's taught me something important," Phoebe replied. "Sometimes the truth comes from unexpected sources. Sometimes the most important witnesses are the ones we almost overlook. And sometimes," Detective Ramirez added, "the most extraordinary heroes have feathers." As if on cue, Miles turned to look at them, his intelligent eyes reflecting the afternoon sunlight. "Family safe now," he declared confidently, before returning his attention to Oliver. Phoebe nodded, a sense of profound gratitude washing over her. Despite the pain and betrayal she'd endured, she had emerged stronger, with a deeper appreciation for the unexpected bonds that defined family, not just blood or marriage, but loyalty, protection, and love. And as she watched Miles gently coaxing Oliver away from a thorny rosebush, she knew that their family, unconventional though it might be, was exactly as it should be, bound together by the whispered truths that had saved them all. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.